Someone asked the other day, well, what now? Now that we've completed our exploration into the place it said we arrive at when we no longer need to try, what now? But before waiting for an answer, it was said, what does it mean to be human? And immediately what came to mind was that poem of Hafez when he says something like, I am not Christian, I am not Buddhist, I am not Muslim, I am not soul, I am not spirit, I am human. So we can ask ourselves, what does it mean to be human? But what also came to mind was, and it's a question, how many times have you met someone who you would like to say to them, get real? So what's the relationship between being human and being real? So there's a story to launch us into our inquiry. It's a story about a man called Gopal. He was born into the priestly caste, but unlike other brahmins, he shunned that way of life. He never went to the temples, he didn't light incense, and he preferred to live in the forest. He went about half naked and tattooed, and he hunted for his living, and he lived off the forest floor and the fruit from the trees. But the brahmins in the city from which he came thought he was a very, very bad influence to the young people of the day. So they decided to try to bring him back into the fold, so to speak. So they took a great statue of Shiva and they took it into the forest nearby where Gopal lived, and they placed it under a walnut tree. And every day they came and anointed it with vermilion, and they put flowers around its neck, and they chanted. And Gopal would come back from his hunting, and he would say, what is that squawking about, and why are you putting stuff on that statue, a piece of stone? He said, I prefer to hug a tree. But they persisted in what it was they were doing. And one day when Gopal was particularly put out by all of that squawking that was going on, he came by and, what is it you're doing? When are you going to stop all this noise and anointing a piece of rock? So as he went by, he kicked it. And Gopal felt, God, that felt damn good. So went and kicked it again. And all of the brahmins were totally affronted. What are you doing? But they persisted, they kept coming back to the forest. But as it happened, Gopal got so much enjoyment from kicking that damn piece of rock that he decided to do it every day. So even when he had to go out of his way, coming back from his hunts and his foraging in the forest, he would go by and kick the statue. Well, of course, the Brahmins continued to be affronted and come every day to try to change him, to bring him back into the way one should worship God as they said it was. But then the monsoon time came, and of course the deluges began to flood the statue. So the brahmins stopped coming, leaving Gopal to. But Gopal, every day when he came back from his hunt, he would go by and he would kick that statue. And even though his foot got sore and he had to go back and massage it, even the massaging felt good after he'd done what he'd done. But one day, when he was coming back and going by, it so happened that a pack of wolves surrounded him before he managed to get to the statue, and he couldn't get there. So he went up the walnut tree to get away from the wolves, and he sat there bemoaning the fact that he hadn't been able to kick the statue. But, after a while, because the wolves didn't go away, he was very cold and very hungry, even though he nestled himself in one of the boughs of the tree. And, of course, he loved trees. They nurtured him, and he revered them. In fact, he considered them his god, like nature was his god. But anyway, by morning, the wolves had gone away, and Gopal came back. But when he was up there, he tried eating the walnuts, and of course they were too hard. So, well, if I can't kick the statue, I'll throw walnuts at it. So he threw the walnuts at the statue. But anyway, the night passed, and eventually he came down from the tree. The wolves had gone, so he was able to go over and kick the statue. But as it happened, he caught a terrible chill, and he died. But anyway, when the god of death, Yama, came to get him, Yama was ecstatic, because at last he was getting the apostate and take him down to the nether realms to get what he deserved, punishment. So Yama took his soul down to the netherworld, and he had his demons start to beat Gopal's soul, and they said to him, "This is the punishment for worshipping what was not the right God. You should have been worshipping the idols, as was said by the faith of the day." But Gopal said, "I would rather go to Gehenna than worship your God. I worship a God who will take me for what I am, with all that I am." But the demons continued to beat his soul. But then, strangely, one of the demons came forth to begin to be, and for the first time Gopal felt a little fear. But to his great surprise, this demon, instead of beating him, stood in front of him to protect him. And all the other demons says, "What this, a traitor amongst our midst?" But this was the shapeshifter, because all of a sudden that demon changed into Shiva's bull, the white bull that Shiva rode, and said, "This man, his time is not up. He does not belong here. I'm taking him with me directly to Shiva." And of course, Yama was very affronted. "He belongs here." But then he started to gnash his fangs and thought, well, I'm going to go up and see what Shiva does about him, because really he is an apostate. So the bull took Gopal up to the celestial realms, where there was Shiva sitting on his throne, one would expect, and there Gopal was brought in front of him, and Shiva welcomed him with great. Yama was very surprised. But anyway, Shiva said, "Yes, this is one of my greatest disciples, one of my greatest devotees." "What do you mean?" said Yama. He he worshipped, he did not follow the faith of the day. And no, said Shiva, every day he came to give me obeisance. There was even one time when he was not able to do so that he fed me walnuts. So Shiva said, he belongs to me. But, said Yama, the god of death, he should have been. But Shiva said, don't you realize something, Yama? That? I don't know, you have to figure out what he said. But anyway, to finish up the story, Shiva said he hasn't finished his time on earth yet, he has work to do. So leave him alone. And so Gopal found himself back sitting under his walnut tree. But it so happened that after the monsoon season, the statue of Shiva had been completely covered. So Gopal went and foraged around with his hand and managed to find the statue and took it out and cleaned it up and put it on his shoulder and took it to a higher place where every day he came to give his obeisance and worship, and quite often he would give it a kick also. So you might say, this is our first story into our inquiry about what's the relationship with being human and being real. But in the meantime, we could ponder on what is it that Shiva said to Yama. I am. What's the rest of what Shiva would say? In this place where we find ourselves, when we no longer need to try to be this or that,